Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Retire Right with Epstein White. I'm Brad White, and this is my partner,
Dave Epstein.
Dave Epstein.
Nice to be here, Bradley.
Dave, how are you today?
Brother, I'm feeling a lot better. I had a kind of a rough week. You go away on vacation just to get sick, and so I got a little head cold, left with a little laryngitis. It's starting to come around. I'm about 80%, but so hopefully you can hear me loud and clear out there. And
I think you're just being a little too honest right now, my friend, because I watched that show last week. You looked fantastic. I couldn't tell otherwise, but hey, as honest as the day is long over here and feeling good and back and ready for another tremendous show. We've got a good one lined up today.
We got a great show, Bradley. Whether you should pay off your mortgage or not, that's one of the common questions we get, Bradley.
Very popular one.
And as you're heading off into retirement, that's one of our segments today, folks. And one of the viewer questions that we're going to be addressing, and all you viewers out there, think of whatever might be keeping you up at night. Send in that question, and if it's a good question, we're going to use it. It's going to be one of our segments. And so one of our viewers, talked about, avoiding losses in retirement. That's, how we always want to avoid losses, right? But boy, when the paychecks stop and losing money when paychecks stop, that's not good in retirement. So we're going to have a whole segment, Bradley, on, how to avoid major losses in retirement.
And then we've got a bit of a retirement alert for you out there. Yeah, each week a little bit of a retirement alert, and for this week it's going to be how to recognize and take advantage of some diamonds under your feet, Dave. So you've got some diamonds that are already under your feet, and we're going to teach you how to find them and take advantage of them. But first, before we get into any and all of that, we're going to be talking about the importance of taking advantage of the rollover process. So rollovers, in-service rollovers, we're going to be talking first about the importance of taking advantage of those. All right, and without further ado, let's get this started. All right, so let's get right into the this week's segment of Investing Smart, right? Investing smart can mean a lot of things, and for this week's show, I think we want to talk about the importance of why you'd want to take advantage of a rollover. And before we really get into dive into why it's important to take advantage of the rollover process, let's first talk a little bit about what a rollover even is, Dave.
Well,
right?
Absolutely. A rollover could be when you simply left the company or you retired, and you took those funds that you had in the company plan and you rolled them over, and you typically are rolling that over to an IRA, a traditional IRA. There's no cost, there's no penalty, there's no fees. So, that's instead of leaving that money behind at the company, you're far better off rolling that money over to an individual IRA, where now the choices, Bradley, are exponentially much greater.
Yeah, and I'm glad you went there. That's really where I wanted to pick this up, right? And just in case you're not fully familiar, so let's make sure we understand. When you hear the word 401k, that just means a company-sponsored retirement plan. If you work at a school or a hospital, that could be called a 403B for you. If you work for a government or a county, as an example, would be a TSP for you. But all that really means is it's a company's employer-sponsored plan. When you hear the word IRA, that stands for Individual Retirement Account. They are basically the exact same thing. It's just that one is kind of through your work and one is something you individually own. Now, there's a lot of great things about the retirement plan at your work, which to me, the most important thing has always been just how easy it is to get it started and to get saving, right? It comes right out of your paycheck, Dave, every single week. Right. All these studies show how hard it is for Americans to save the right amount of retirement. So just knowing that you kind of elected this thing one time and it started to come out of your paycheck before you ever got it, I mean, that's huge.
And I love that, folks. It's your pay, when you're electing that payroll deduction, one of the great things about saving for retirement is remembering to pay yourself first. And through payroll deduction, Bradley, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. So we've got certainly the payroll deduction. You get, a tax deduction. So when you put money in, you get this nice tax deduction. Hey, nothing better in this world than free money. Right. So if your employer is giving you a match, you definitely want to take advantage of getting that free money. So again, a lot of great things about the company-sponsored plan. The downfall, really, more than anything else, is just the fact that you're limited to the amount of choices, right? In your company-sponsored plan, this does not mean they're bad choices, and there could be a good, 20 of them in there. But, I mean, there's a universe of investment options that exist out there, and having to choose from only 20, that could be kind of like, sitting inside the Library of Congress and only getting to choose from one bookshelf, right? Again, not necessarily that it's bad, it's just limiting. Now, the unfortunate part is when you're working for a company, you don't have a choice. You're stuck in the plan. But when you leave, when you quit, when you retire, that opens up the ability to do a rollover, which just means you set up an IRA somewhere else. The funds go from the bucket of the company-sponsored plan into the bucket of individually owned. There's typically no fees, no taxes, Dave, as you already mentioned, but now you've got the whole universe of investment choices. So almost always a win, basically.
Always a win, Bradley. But hey, when you turn 59 and a half, folks, 59 and a half, there's another opportunity. The government knows it's crunch time. And so once we get to age 59 and a half, you're maybe a handful of years away from retiring. So the vast majority of the custodians of these plans, allow you at age 59 and a half to roll your money over to an IRA. It's called an in-service rollover. In-service meaning, Bradley, I continue to work, continue to make a living there, but I can roll my money over to an IRA, and where I have hundreds of more choices that would do a much better job at protecting my money, not just growing my money, And gotta love that.
Yeah, the title of this segment is Investing Smart. Nothing smarter than giving yourself a whole universe of choices, right, rather than be limited to just a few. So once you've reached the age 59 and a half, excellent point, Dave, that's when Congress created this law called an in-service rollover, which means you keep working, you keep saving, it's diligent time, it's crunch time as you put it, but go ahead and empty that bucket here, give yourself that IRA bucket, open up to all those other choices. Now, one quick caveat to this whole discussion is, what if you need some of these monies before the age 59 and a half? If you leave your money in a company-sponsored plan like a 401k, you can access the monies without the IRS 10% penalty from 55 on, whereas if you roll the money into an IRA, you actually can't access those monies without the 10% penalty until 59 and a half. So of all the great reasons to do a rollover, we definitely want you to at least be aware of, if you know you need some of these monies before 59 and a half, then there actually could be one reason to potentially leave at least some of those monies in the 401k. But really, short of that reason, there's almost never a reason not to take advantage of the rollover process when you leave, quit, or retire, or the in-service rollover option, which is even if you're still working there, but you've reached that kind of magical age of 59 and a half. And really, Dave, kind of one final reason to that is we just see a lot of times people have a lot of old 401ks, old IRAs. Yeah.
And that's not diversification, Bradley.
No.
Folks, you should roll all of those over into one IRA. And from within that one IRA, you can diversify into really hundreds of different of investments. And here at Epstein White, we can help you do that. And so stay tuned. We enjoy that you're here watching us on Retire Right with Epstein White.
You made it. Years of hard work, investing, planning, and now you're here. The long-awaited reward you spent a lifetime looking forward to. But what now? After years of growing a nest egg, now you want to manage it. Use it to fund your dreams. Make sure it lasts as long as you need it. And make sure it leaves a legacy for those you love. So what do? Wall Street continues to be uncertain, and many conservative options have all but dropped through the floor. How do you maintain opportunities for growth without risking what you can't afford to lose? That's where we come in. We are financial professionals. From investments and insurance products to tax reduction strategies, estate planning solutions, and guaranteed retirement income you cannot outlive. You've worked a lifetime to get here. Let us help you enjoy it to the fullest. For a special free guide entitled 10 Things to Know About Retirement Income, simply contact us today.
All right, and welcome back to Retire Right with Epstein and White. And we just had a fantastic discussion on why it's so important to take advantage of the rollover process. And now it's time for us to get into our financial tip of the week. And for this week, what we want to talk about is really the importance and why it's so crucial, really why it's all about avoiding those major losses in retirement. And I think that's something that's somewhat intuitive, right? Most people believe it's prudent as you go into retirement not to take too much risk and to make sure that you don't lose your nest egg. But I want to really explain the math and kind of give you some visuals of why it's so important to avoid those major losses. And I think a lot of people also intuitively think that in order to kind of end up with the most amount of money over a long period of time in your accounts, that it's really more about making those major gains, right? So, at our firm, what we've noticed through conversations, hundreds of times over, is that a lot of people think again, to get those accounts up. It's all about these major gains when those good years happen. But again, these visuals, this math, and our financial tip of the week is going to teach you that really it's more about avoiding those major losses. And I'll tell you, the way to start this conversation is probably from my friend Warren Buffett again. Warren once called compounding interest the eighth wonder of the world. And if you've paid attention to Warren's career over time, he hasn't been wrong terribly often. And I would say that he was once again kind of right on the money here. So again, I'm kind of a visual person. That's how I learn. I'm kind of a visual teacher. So I want you to take a look at this image right here. And really what you're seeing is a series of numbers. And what it's telling you is if you lose a certain percentage of your portfolio, what percentage gain you have to just to get back to even. So if you look at an example, right over here, if you lost 25% of your portfolio, you need a 33% rate of return just to get back to even. And I'll give it to you in numbers. Maybe that helps it understand a little bit better as well. If you had $100,000 and you lost 50% in year one, you'd be down to $50,000. So if you made 50% in year two, that means you only made 50% off of $50,000, which means you'd only be back to $75,000, right? You're not back to that original $100,000 that you put in. So one of the things that's hopefully being shaped right now that you can see is that while you may have quote unquote lost 50% one year and you may have quote unquote made 50% one year, this isn't equal, right? Those things are not equal. You're not back to even. Now this next visual here is going to kind of tell the same story in another similar way, which is again kind of showing you that if you have certain percentage losses, right? If you lose money and then you kind of make an average annual return for a period of years afterwards, how many years does it take to get back even? So we're kind of showing you a couple visuals here. This one I think is really going to help it stick in too, because it shows you how many years you need to make these different returns just to get your account back to even. Now I want to switch to one more visual here and really kind of drive this story home. What you're going to see is just a real hypothetical example, and we're looking at the S&P 500 index here, right? What you would think of as the stock market as a whole, and we're looking from 2002 all the way through 2013, so a 12-year stretch. You're seeing $1 million starting value, and then those percentages are just what did the S&P 500 do each of those calendar years? What was the total return? Now, if you look at this 12-year period of time, you'll see there's only two bad years, right? 2002 and 2008, those were two very bad years, but it was just two of them, right? The other 10 years were all positive years in the market, so more good years than bad years here. Now, when 2008 was happening and Lehman Brothers was failing and Bear Stearns and AIG and the whole world was melting down, if you manage not to panic and sell, one lesson here is that, yes, your accounts recovered okay if you just kind of stuck it out. Now, what you'll see on the left side is the exact same time period, the same 12 years, same S&P 500, same $1 million, except hypothetically here, what if you didn't lose money those two real bad years? But the trade-off was that you only made half of all 10 of those good years. So 10 times out of 12, the picture that we're painting for you is you only make half the returns that somebody in the market actually made. 10 times out of 12, just to not lose those 2 years. What you'll notice is at the very bottom here, you actually finished with slightly more money. Now that seems hard to imagine, and it shocks most people we show this to. 10 times out of 12, you could only make half of what somebody else makes in those good years, but it's all about avoiding those major losses. And hey, right now it's the most important time as ever to get a second opinion on your portfolio. So give us a call, come to our website, and we are happy to help. And stay tuned for more Retire Right with Epstein White. All right, and welcome back again to Retire Right with Epstein and White. As always, I'm Brad White.
I'm Dave Epstein.
And right now, we are going to tackle this week's viewer question of the week. As always, Dave, this show is all about you, right? The show is all about you. We want to know what it is that we can help you out with the most, right? What's kind of hot off the presses here? What's on your mind? What issue can we tackle? And this week's question was, should I pay off my mortgage or not as I head into retirement? Now, we're going to make a couple assumptions here a little bit, Dave, which is that this particular viewer has the ability, right? Maybe has cash or different investments in different accounts where they have a balance of their mortgage left, right? And they're kind of tossing, back and forth of, should I have the mortgage and keep my money invested, right? Or does it make more sense, let's say, to take the, whatever investments I have and then just pay off the balance of the mortgage?
And Bradley,
we're talking about the kind of money that we can get out without a tax penalty, right? We're talking about
Certainly.
non-qualified dollars where we could get to without early withdrawal penalty or certainly a tax penalty. We wouldn't be talking about pulling large lump sums out of an IRA.
I think what's kind of important to as we phrase this whole conversation, Dave, is make no mistake about it. These are both good scenarios, right? Okay, no one would ever say that paying off a mortgage is a bad thing or that investing your money is a bad thing. It's just which of the two decisions is the right thing or the best thing to do. And just like everything else, as we always say as a theme on the show, is it really depends on your specific situation. But what we want to do is arm you with a few different kind of bullet points here, Dave, right? A few different things that you want to think about, that you want to assess within your own situation to see if for you it would be a good idea to pay off the mortgage or not. Now, the first word that's kind of important in this conversation that I was writing down, Dave, is the word arbitrage. Right? So the word arbitrage is a fancy way of saying, if I've got a 30-year 4% mortgage over here, could I earn more than 4% on those monies over the next 30 years? Now, historically speaking, the answer should be yes, right? I mean, even in today's low interest rate environment where, no question, it's harder to get 4% or any rate of return than it was historically when interest rates are higher. But over a 30-year period of time, which is what we're talking about in this example, you should be able to earn more, right, than that 4% rate of return. So that's typically the first argument of why you'd hear these days, not necessarily, right, to pay off the mortgage. Number one is, well, don't pay off something if you can earn a better rate of return on those monies, right, than the cost of the debt on that.
That second one, Bradley, is my mortgage is deductible, my interest is deductible.
What about the tax implications, right?
What's the tax implications? On that. And so, Bradley, I know you can dispel that common myth of, you should, don't pay off your mortgage. You got that deduction when you have no other deductions when you head off into retirement. But really, Bradley, how meaningful is that deduction?
Yeah, thank you for that. So here's kind of another little myth or another thing that drives me nuts, honestly, when I hear about this, is that if you pay off your mortgage in retirement, it's going to hurt your tax situation. So let's talk about that. The interest that you pay on your mortgage is what's called an itemized deduction, okay? All of us, even if we have no deductions whatsoever, we all get what's called the standard deduction. So itemized deductions aren't incredibly meaningful for all of us because we'd already have what's called the standard deduction anyways. Now, during our working years, we have taxable income coming in from paychecks. Since that income's already coming in, then yes, having that mortgage deduction is very meaningful. But in retirement, remember, paychecks aren't coming in anymore, which means if you have a mortgage, you need to pull money out of accounts to service that mortgage. So you could be doing things like pulling money out of your IRAs and your 401ks, which is taxable income, just to keep the small interest deduction on the mortgage. Versus if you did not have a mortgage, right, if you paid it off, now you don't have to pull those monies out of the accounts to service the mortgage. So if that means things like IRAs and 401ks, now you're preventing taxable income in retirement. Sure, you lose the quote-unquote itemized deduction, but you actually prevent a whole bunch of taxable income from coming in right away. What I'm basically getting at, long story short here, Dave, is that for some people in retirement, believe it or not, from whatever you've heard before, paying off a mortgage might actually help your tax situation in retirement. It doesn't mean overall it's a good idea yet,
right.
But I'm very glad you brought that up because a lot of times people will just say in a vacuum, well, I don't want to pay off my mortgage because it'll hurt my tax situation. Again, during your working years, probably true, usually is. In retirement, not necessarily.
Lots of right answers out there, folks. But what's the best right answer? That's what we're
talking about, the best right answer, right? So we've talked a little bit about the tax implications here, that word arbitrage. I would say liquidity is the next bullet point here.
Huge. If you're going to be able to pay off that mortgage, if that really made perfect sense from all perspectives, the last thing we'd want to do, Bradley, is drain off all the liquidity till all we had left was, I had no mortgage, but any income I take, it's all coming out of my taxable, my IRA accounts.
Yeah.
So, another point, that we have to be mindful of when we're making these decisions.
Yeah, right. It's just, look, we all need liquidity, right? We need to have funds available both during working years and certainly in retirement, right? I mean, things happen, right? Life happens. We certainly all know that. And liquidity is not just important for emergencies, which I kind of just alluded to, but opportunities, right? I mean, new investments, new ideas, new things get created, and you want to have funds in your world without tax implications that you can grab if you need to in a hurry. So even if all those other things we talked about said it might be a good idea to take a whole bunch of that money and pay off a mortgage, if you take too much out and you don't have liquidity, that can be a problem too, Dave.
It is. It's a big problem. So, folks, we're here to help you. That was a great question by one of our viewers. Just keep them coming, folks. We'll pick one of yours if it's a good one. And stay tuned. We have a lot more here at Epstein & White. Retire right. And that's what you're tuning into.
You made it. Years of hard work, investing, planning, and now you're here. The long-awaited reward you spent a lifetime looking forward to. But what now? After years of growing a nest egg, now you want to manage it. Use it to fund your dreams. Make sure it lasts as long as you need it. And make sure it leaves a legacy for those you love. So what do? Wall Street continues to be uncertain, and many conservative options have all but dropped through the floor. How do you maintain opportunities for growth without risking what you can't afford to lose? That's where we come in. We are financial professionals. From investments and insurance products to tax reduction strategies, estate planning solutions, and guaranteed retirement income you cannot outlive. You've worked a lifetime to get here. Let us help you enjoy it to the fullest. For a special free guide entitled 10 Things to Know About Retirement Income, simply contact us today.
All right, and welcome back. And it's time for that weekly retirement alert. And this week's retirement alert is how to really identify and, more importantly, take advantage of what we call these diamonds under your feet. It's really important for all of us to accumulate as much as we can, right? To be financially responsible and to try to save as much as we can as we head into retirement. And again, obviously, that's what we want to take advantage of. But it's also really important to just understand things we already have and to optimize what we have. And Dave, a lot of times we kind of, over our lifetimes, we'll just accumulate a lot of stuff, right? Yeah. At some point in time, we buy a little bit of this. At some point in time, we buy a little bit of that. And what we do is sometimes, we just forget about some of those things. Believe it or not, we actually forget about some of those things we bought along the way. And maybe even more commonly than that, our goals for when we bought something initially are just maybe different now 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road. So even if we didn't forget about what we have, we just don't realize that we could be using it in a different way, in a more efficient way. And I think one of the things that we see the most in that context is things like cash value life insurances from our clients along the way.
Absolutely, Bradley. And, you bought some life insurance way back in the day, and kids were, you're going off to your office every day, raising the kids, taking care of the family, got a new home, got a mortgage, needed life insurance. And maybe the life insurance you bought was whole life insurance. Gosh, Bradley, whole life insurance has been around for 200 years. And since the 70s, interest rates were really high. If I take you folks back to that period of time, 14, 15% and more. Then there was another type of policy that came about called universal life. And then as policies morphed and improved, then there became a policy known as variable life. Variable life had mutual funds inside the policy to give you more market-oriented type growth. So if you bought all this insurance and now the kids are raised, they're gone, they're through school and starting their own families or their own lives,
doing well,
and maybe the mortgage is not what it once was. Maybe it's been paid down or maybe paid off, or maybe there's still a mortgage. But whatever the needs for the life insurance was back then, today it's different. But you still have this policy, and maybe now that policy, Bradley's accumulated a fair amount of cash.
Yeah.
And so what can you do with that cash value in that policy today? Let me give you folks some ideas. Here's one. Did you know that you could take a lifetime of income from your life insurance policy? That's right, you can. Did you know that your life insurance policy can also provide a living benefit in the event that you need long-term care? Bradley, that's huge. That's one of the major risks in retirement after we're age 65. Yeah. 2 out of 3 people, Bradley, needing that kind of care somewhere during their life.
2 out of 3, yeah, you heard that right. I think one of the themes of this conversation, just to kind of make sure it's clear, is that when you buy these life insurance policies, you could have bought them specifically for the life insurance, death benefit reasons. You might have also bought them because of the cash that they accumulate inside. So they're a little trickier maybe than the average savings vehicle in that they have kind of this insurance element, but this also cash value, this kind of investment element to them also. And as Dave was just pointing out, maybe you did buy it initially for more of the insurance reasons. Maybe those reasons have changed or have gone away over time, and now you could be looking at diamonds under your feet here, right? You could have all this cash that you can now repurpose and use for these new goals in this new stage that you're in. And really, Dave, what I want to do is I want to give us some, kind of put some meat on the bone here for all of you watching and give you a bit of an example. And so I was looking at an example this morning, Dave, where it was a 60-year-old guy, and we assumed that he had, good health, what we would call a preferred non-tobacco rating. And let's say he had bought a $200,000 death benefit whole life insurance policy. Again, it could have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? Kind of a classic situation we run across. And so that $200,000 death benefit policy maybe had built up $100,000 of cash inside the policy. What this person could do is take that $100,000 of cash, transfer it into a new life insurance policy. There's no tax ramifications whatsoever to do this. And now that $100,000 immediately would buy a $411,000 policy, which is paid up for his life. So you heard that correctly. He'll never have to make a new premium ever again. It's just transferring the existing cash, which is going to more than double the death benefit on the policy. So if this person's goals were death benefit oriented, then nothing better from a diamonds on your feet standpoint than instantly doubling that. But more importantly, this policy will let him access up to 4% of that, or about $16,000 a month of tax-free income. And if he used all $16,000 a month for long-term care expenses, I should make sure I say, if he uses all $16,000 a month, then that would last for as much as 25 months. And if, for, God forbid, you pass away as you're using these long-term care benefits, then all the remaining money still goes, like any other traditional death benefit, to his family. So just another classic example of diamonds under your feet, which, is in this case an insurance policy. We can find all sorts of meaningful reasons to repurpose things like cash that you have in the banks. We'll teach you how to save taxes in retirement on things like cash. So this insurance discussion really is only one example of diamonds under your feet, but it's a very common example that we see. And really just one of those scenarios, again, if nothing else, there are a lot of times you have something already. We can teach you how to repurpose this. We want to help you find those diamonds under your feet. So go ahead, give us a call, visit our website, and let's see what kind of diamonds in your feet we can help really turbocharge for you.
Well, thank you for joining us this week. That's all the financial fun Bradley and I have for you. But we learned a lot today. To pay off a mortgage or not before we go into retirement, diamonds under your feet, how to maximize your life insurance, and a whole lot more. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to watch Retire Right with Epstein White. Stay tuned. We're going to be here every week, right here at the same time. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.